Okay, why don't we get started? We're 2 minutes into the 5 o'clock hour.
Great.
And I have opening up with welcome remarks from you, Supervisor Kershner.
Thank you, Mr. Buffington. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I appreciate it. I just want to welcome everyone who's on tonight's Rural Telecommunications Forum. I'm really pleased that you've joined us. We have close to 100 participants on tonight's call, which quite frankly is amazing given this was a pretty quick turnaround and we just had a vote last week on the program, some of the program we're going to talk about. So thank you, everyone, both the panelists and those who are listening, for joining us this evening. Tonight's call was scheduled because Supervisor Buffington and I saw a need to bring our businesses in Western Loudoun together with the experts to give you a direct information about the available programs and to answer your questions. Without a doubt, COVID-19 has launched into an unprecedented and uncertain times in Loudoun County, especially for our business community. So, small business, we believe, is the backbone of our economy, but it's a critical component for Western Loudoun, especially. And anyone else who's on is not talking, just for purposes of the call, just if you can mute it, that would be very helpful to the rest of us. So just as way up, my office actually did an informal survey in Western Loudoun throughout Catoctin and found that 75% of the employees in Western Loudoun, or the employers in Western Loudoun, had 1 to 5 employees, 10% had 11 to 50 employees, 9% were sole practitioners, so they had no employees, and 2% had 51 or more employees. Those businesses included farms, bed and breakfasts, wineries, breweries, graphic design shops, horse boarding stables, veterinarians, restaurants, dog kennels, and much more. Out of the respondents who responded to this survey, 26% said they wanted their loan to cover $3,000 to $5,000, 39% wanted the loan to cover $5,000 to $10,000, and 35% wanted the loan to cover more than $10,000. They are looking for us for help. 85% of the people who responded in my informal survey in our proposed county grant program wanted to participate. As great as the programs are, most respondents never applied for the SBA, PPP, or the Virginia 30-day loan for a number of reasons. I won't get into those now, but that's unfortunate. So we will hear more from the business interpretation program, interruption program, and the Board of Supervisors that the Board of Supervisors completed last week, in addition to specific funding for rural businesses put forth by Supervisor Buffington. Let me say at the outset that I don't think anyone on this call believes that the initial funding for the business interruption is enough to cover the hardship for the businesses that the businesses are experiencing right now. However, I think, and Supervisor Buffington would agree with me, that this is a great start. As a member of the Finance Committee, we will be reviewing Loudoun's financial situation monthly, and at the Finance Committee, looking for additional revenue as County Administrator Hemstreet comes to us to look to dedicate to this program on a monthly basis. We thank you for having your businesses in Loudoun. We recognize all the years, all the blood, the sweat, and capital you have put into your businesses. And our goal is to make sure we can get you help, because without you, our economy in Western Loudoun will not thrive. We have a panel of fantastic participants this evening, all of which are operating on the front lines to battle the COVID-19 on behalf of the business community. I want to thank Beth, Eric, Alice, and Pete for joining us. We hopefully also will have a couple of participants from the White House, which I will introduce once we kick off our panelists. But before I turn the program over to Supervisor Buffington, I would like to thank Buddy Reiser and the Department of Economic Development for all that they have done for Loudoun's businesses. From day one, DED and Buddy had the vision and creativity to immediately jump in and find solutions for the economic situation and the reality that we are facing. They have built the foundation for the rural economy over many years, and their commitment to helping our businesses during the COVID-19 emergency shows their dedication to keeping the rural economy alive and well in Loudoun County. So with that, Supervisor Buffington, I open the floor to you for any comments you may have.
Well, thank you, Caleb. I think those were excellent opening remarks. I too want to thank our experts for being on the call this evening. And I just want to reiterate that our rural businesses, I think, are key, absolutely key, and are critical to maintaining Western Loudoun's rural, historic, and scenic character for as long into the future as possible. And so we very much appreciate you. We know that right now is a very difficult time to be a small business anywhere. Luckily, here in Loudoun, we have a lot of support. And so that's the point of this call, is for us to hear from our small businesses out here in Western Loudoun and rural Loudoun, to hear your questions and to have the subject matter experts on the phone to answer them for you. And we have that. And so without further ado, in order to get to as many questions as possible and get our small business owners as much information in this next hour, I will say that I have to go at 6 p.m. because I have to get on another rural phone call. I will go ahead and introduce Mr. Buddy Reiser. He is Loudoun County Department of Economic Development Director, and he is flat out awesome. And so, Mr. Reiser, with that introduction, you want to take us forward?
Thank you both, Supervisor Kershner and Supervisor Buffington. I guess I could add that to my title, but not sure that would work out well for me. I do want to take just a moment to kind of talk about what we have done to prepare for this really unprecedented interruption in our business community. The building blocks of Loudoun's economy have been very strong for years now. We've continued to build a diverse economy, and things have gone pretty well. We've taken our commercial tax base from 19% to almost 40%. But then COVID came. And so what I'd like to do is talk about how we've responded. Beginning March 16th, DED directed all of our resources to information gathering and dissemination and doing direct outreach. We've updated our COVID-19 website with the latest information every day because, as you know, it's been constantly changing. We focused our efforts on three main areas: business support, business resources, and workforce assistance. Business support resources include an interactive map that highlights hundreds of Loudoun businesses who are open with operations in compliance with the current guidelines. That would include businesses that offer innovative delivery of practices, products, or services. And that would include pickup, free delivery, e-cards, discounts, and things like that. Business resources include financing and loan options, business education, and training and information for Loudoun's rural businesses, as we've tried to figure out exactly how to respond. We're offering one-on-one assistance to anyone who's in need of navigating the Grantor Loans program. And then workforce assistance covers the resources for both businesses and employees, including a new Loudoun's job board that is an easy to work on, and we have an easy to follow guide utilizing Virginia's unemployment insurance information. We've launched a couple of programs that I think you will understand as very important. We launched the Loudoun Made, Loudoun Grown Marketplace. It's a new e-commerce platform that is free to our farmers and rural businesses to market and sell their wares. And I'm happy to say that we've relaunched Take Loudoun Home 2020 with Visit Loudoun and the Loudoun Chamber, a marketing campaign that is designed to promote shopping locally. As I have noted, and as I know you're aware, this has been an unprecedented time for business, both in the extent and the speed in which the economy has been impacted. Federal funds are out there, they've been on the way, and I know we'll talk more about those. But we wanted to make sure we were getting money into the hands of our business owners as soon as possible. As Supervisor Kershner mentioned, the Board of Supervisors unanimously approved a business interruption fund to provide local and timely assistance to small businesses last Tuesday. The board directed $1.15 million established from the Commercial Incentive Fund to be issued as grants to small businesses through the Economic Development Authority. That includes a fund that Supervisor Buffington and Supervisor Kershner put forward that is focused on rural businesses. Then on Thursday, the Economic Development Authority added more money to the fund, making a total of $1.14 million. We can talk more about that process, but the thing to know is that this grant process is going to be a very open and transparent process. It starts tomorrow. We'll open the fund application tomorrow at noon, and it will go until Saturday at noon to give everybody an opportunity to apply for the fund. We can go more into that later, but right this time I'd like to send it back to the supervisors.
Thank you, buddy, and I appreciate that. Would you like me to introduce the remaining panelists? I'm happy to do so.
If you'd like.
Okay. So also with us, thank you, buddy. That's great, and we look forward to. I know there are a number of questions that have been sent in, so we look forward to your answer on some of those questions, which Supervisor Buffington and I will present here shortly. We also have online with us Beth Erickson. Beth, are you there? There she is. Excellent.
Yes, I am.
So Beth is president and CAO of Visit Loudoun. And Beth, do you have a presentation for those listening for us this evening? Oh, by the way, for those who are listening, Beth is the lifeblood for Western Loudoun in our ag business. So she plays a huge role in it, and we look to her for a lot of great answers. So thank you, Beth, for joining us.
Well, thank you so much. It's my pleasure. I'll give a similar update as Buddy did in terms of what we're seeing from Visit Loudoun's perspective. So, prior to probably March 3rd, I think we can say, the tourism economy for Loudoun County was booming. I know many of you have heard me say that we were the third highest generator of tourism revenue in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We generate more revenue in Loudoun County than Virginia Beach and Williamsburg. So tourism is a huge economic driver for Loudoun County. And we were tracking above where we were seeing previous years. So we were on a very good trajectory until COVID-19 hit. So when we started seeing the effects and understanding what was going on in early March, we put into effect a three-phase approach. The first was really focused on mitigating the immediate impact of what was happening and communicating to our partners and our businesses information that we felt that they really needed to have at their fingertips very quickly. And we did that through information on our website. If you've not had a chance to go on our website, we have a COVID-19 tourism impact page, which really aggregates a lot of different information. We've also been reaching out to our partners and pulling surveys and gathering as much on-the-ground data as possible, which we are then sharing out with everyone. We also launched a very successful webinar series that has been on every Wednesday. It's a Wednesday webinar series that we focused. The initial phase, again, is on mitigation, which was working with Eric, who you're going to hear from in a moment, from our SBDC, looking at what we're hearing from our congressional representatives and everything that we can provide to you to give you information to make your decisions as you were looking for applying for those loans, going after that funding, and trying to leverage as much as you can for your businesses. We also launched with the Visit Loudoun Foundation and the Community Foundation of Loudoun, the Tourism and Hospitality Emergency Relief Fund. And through the generosity of many of the people on this call, we were able to open our first round of funding. We were able to raise about $30,000 in 3 weeks. And again, that is specifically to help support our tourism and hospitality related professionals, those individuals on the front line who are facing job loss or loss of hours because of COVID-19. So we are now moving a little bit more into that restarting phase, which is really taking a look at what it will take to restart Loudoun's tourism economy. We had a great session just last week with Buddy and Tony talking about the Take Loudoun Home program. Tomorrow, we've got a fantastic webinar that is titled From Go to Open for Business, What Will It Take to Restart Loudoun's Economy? where we'll be joined by Reggie Cooper from Salamander Resort and Spa, Lacey Huber from Stone Tower, and Jason Miller from the Wine Kitchen. Again, what we're looking at is, once we have a green light, what are the realistic expectations as we begin to start seeing, those Executive Order 53 loosening some of those restrictions and travel restrictions, and then of course Executive Order 55, which is the stay at home, which will expire in June. So during this next phase of the restarting is really we're going to be focusing on what you need to do as business owners, or giving some suggestions as business owners. What do you need to do to get ready for welcoming back our visitors and helping to fuel Loudoun's recovery? And then the last is going to be really looking at what will Loudoun look like moving forward as a visitor destination. I think what we're seeing from traveler sentiments, what we're seeing from national and international data is the traveling segment and the visitor economy is going to look very different for a while. And I think with that comes unique challenges, but I will also say with that comes great opportunity. So we will continue to keep the community engaged with what we're doing. Just as I've often said, I think that tourism and hospitality was the canary in the coal mine when COVID-19 really started happening, because ours were the first businesses that you visibly saw impacted. I will also say that I believe that Loudoun's recovery starts with tourism. So I look forward to continuing to work with our many partners on helping to provide the support as we welcome back people to really, I think, the best part of Virginia and the Mid-Atlantic, if not the entire country, which is Loudoun County. So thank you.
Thank you, Beth. It's great to have you on our team and fighting for us, and thank you for your presentation. Next on the agenda, we have Eric Byrd. Thanks for joining us tonight, Eric. Eric is the manager of the Small Business Development Center, and will give us a brief kind of outlook on and some of his thoughts and presentation. Thanks for joining us, Eric.
Thank you, Supervisor Kershner. Good to be here. In deciding what to talk about, there's so much information going around that what I think I'd like to do is give a brief overview of some of the status and what's going on with the SBA programs. And then I know there's some questions that we can dive into some more specifics in a little bit. And then I'm going to make some PowerPoint slides available that I'll share those with Brian, and he can send those out to anybody that has some more detailed information about the programs. The biggest thing right now is that there are two primary programs that are available from the SBA at the federal level, and that's what we have been helping small businesses with primarily since this whole mess sort of took off. That's the disaster loans, or the economic injury disaster loan, or EIDL, and the Paycheck Protection Program, which was part of the CARES Act, or the PPP. So as we all know, not very long ago, the funding for those ran out, and last weekend, actually, the SBA took the new funding that was voted by Congress and opened up those programs again on Monday, yesterday. So a couple of updates. This is how fast the information changes. As of yesterday, the PPP program, from what we understand, is up and running again. And so people are able to be working with their banks to be able to get applications in for PPP. As far as the disaster loan, or the EIDL loans, the EIDL loans are back on hold. So they have paused the EIDL loans again. I believe that they had some technical issues with that yesterday morning. I'm not 100% sure if the pause is only because of the technical issues, or because they also have such a backlog of applications that were already in the system that they're trying to clear some of that backlog. But right now, the word from the SBA is that's on pause, and they are processing all existing applications, and they'll let us know what's going on in the future. So stand by for that. The thing to keep in mind for anyone who has already applied for either of those loan programs, is that if you got your loan application in and it was processed, then it is in process with the SBA being approved. If it's a disaster loan, the SBA does that directly. So they are working to get all of those processed and approved. If you got a PPP application into the bank or financial institution, then they are working diligently to make sure it goes through their process and then get logged in and uploaded into the SBA system for the final bit of approval. So the question we get most right now is beyond the what are the programs and what do they do. Mostly what we're hearing is, how do I get information about what the status of my loan is? And the status depends on which program you're participating in. We actually have businesses who participate in both as well, which can make it even more confusing. So for the disaster loans, the information all comes directly from the SBA. And unfortunately, there are long wait times on getting any information from the SBA. So it's unfortunately wait and hear information as they come. The way the process works, you put in the application. When it goes into the queue, when it comes out of the queue, they will process, and that's when they will look at the advance. So there's an advance component to the EIDL loan. That's when they process the advance. So what we have is some people who are not hearing anything for several weeks, and then they will get an email from the SBA and money gets deposited into their account for that advance. So if that's happening to you, that's totally normal. That is not unusual. Then they will continue processing to determine the total amount of the loan, and then you will get paperwork for the EIDL loan and move that forward as fast as they can get it through the process. If you have applied with a bank, then you need to continue working with the bank. The bank is the ones who are processing all of those applications. They as well were overwhelmed, and I know that they're all doing their best to process everything as quickly as possible. But continue to stay in touch with them. I know that they have challenges with people that are flooding them. We might get some information about that a little bit too, about that process. But so just keep asking the bank where it is. If it got into the process with the SBA, then it is being approved and the money should come out. Get in before the interruption. There was a pause on all of them. It was sitting in a stack, basically waiting at the bank for the SBA to open back up, which it did yesterday. And now the banks are starting to process that backlog as well. So that will happen as quickly as is possible. We can talk a little bit about which program might be best for your business. My best recommendation, to sort of keep this a little short and get to some questions, is contact the SBDC. So our function in all of this is that we're a grant-funded coaching program that we're all about business assistance. So we're partly funded by the SBA and funded by Loudoun County Economic Development to provide cost coaches. So we have coaches on staff from business one-on-one, obviously virtual, as we're doing most things. They are staying by. We have a group of coaches. We have availability. Come to our website, loudonsbdc.com. We actually just launched a brand new website last night that has FAQ information about loans and other information, as well as a button where you can click and get go through the process to get signed with a coach. And partly the reason that I recommend that is everybody's situation is just a little bit different. There really is the, and if we speak with our coach, can help you what might make the most for your business and to help you determine which program you do qualify for and what to apply and understand a little bit about the process. But beyond that, as was echoed, as Beth was talking about, we are also starting to get to businesses about, okay, well, what's next? So that's wonderful that if we get assistance program and this money comes in and we help you survive, hopefully the next 2 months, whatever, then there's still that. And so there's a bunch of, including Visit Loudoun and the Loudoun Chamber and Economic Development folks who are all starting to think about how can we help you to do some planning so that you can start to shift to recovery mode. And the SBDC is doing the same. We're a statewide network, and we actually have a working group at the working on tools and process and content. We have a webinar series that's going on this week, all trying to help you look forward to what's going to happen when you start to open. So, I'll be happy to take any questions. Try to field any information that we.
Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it. If you want to stay on the line here for a little bit, and people also get that PowerPoint by going to the webpage as well and contacting.
We'll actually upload it, make it available. People can download it. Most of the information that's in that is also available in our FAQ section on our website, but I'll make sure that the overview is available for anybody that wants to come download it.
Great, thank you. Really appreciate it. We have one or two individuals from the White House possibly on the line. Let me go over a little bit since is Steve Bulger on, Regional Administrator for SBA? And I was going to attempt to join the call and perhaps might have some additional comments. If not, it's okay. Steve, are you there? It's not like he has a lot to do these days, so maybe he could not make it. All right. So if Steve does come on, that would be great. We'll check to see if he's on later, or we'll find out if he does get on. Let's now turn to Alice Fraser. Alice, are you there?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, excellent. And Alice, and Ms. Fraser is President and CEO of the Bank of Charlestown. Is that correct? And I think you're going to share some information a little bit, maybe to our small businesses in Loudoun County on some things that you have learned through these programs and how they might be able to assist and access the money in the grant programs that the small banks and the banks in general are providing. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Supervisor Kershner and Supervisor Buffington, for putting this on and the opportunity. We are in Loudoun, we are BCT, the Communities Bank. That's our doing business as. Formerly, we're Bank of Charlestown. And give you a little bit of background, and Eric did a great job explaining a number of the PPP programs, which are administered by the banks. And round one, as he referred to, really lasted only about 13.5 days and issued over 1 billion loans for an average of 169,000, which was pretty fast when you think about the amount of dollars that went out to the public. Round two did start yesterday, and if you were a banker trying to log in the applications and the request, you probably thought you were working with a Model T Ford type platform, because unfortunately it was just very clunky with 5,000 banks trying to log in these applications for loans. Seemed to free up a bit last night, and things are moving a lot faster. But I would say, if anybody that is on the line that is still thinking about applying for a PPP loan, now is definitely the time to do it, because again, the money is moving faster through the authorization process than it was the first go around. And I'll give you for instance, of the 310 million that was authorized in the second round, 30 billion of it, 310 billion, 30 billion of that was allocated to community banks from asset size 10 billion and under. That money has already been fully allocated as of 3 p.m. this afternoon. So not even quite a full 48 hours, that money's gone. So I would suggest people move fast and work with their bank, or if they haven't heard from a bank, their bank, they've got an application in and they just are very concerned, you can certainly call another bank and put an application in there. In the PPP world, a lot of guidelines were not really established at the beginning of it, and each day the bankers were learning more and more. But what's important to know is the banker has a good faith responsibility to do a reasonable review of your application and the payroll that you submitted and the expenses that you submitted. So they're going to ask for additional information at the beginning of the process to verify that the amount of the loan that you requested is accurate overall. And what may impact many of you on the phone too, the self-employed guidelines and the farm guidelines were just issued a few days ago. So just as the money was running out, they issued guidance to the banks on how to deal with self-employment folks in a PPP loan, and then just recently for the Schedule F farmers too. So it's changing every day for us, and we're doing our best to work through it. Lots of questions regarding forgiveness and what that might look like. You have, once your loan has been authorized, the bank has 10 days to give that money to you. Our bank is actually opening up a separate account and depositing the money for business in that account, so it's easier to track how they spend it. And also, we've been providing a spreadsheet to our borrowers, to our customers, to help them track it. So each time that they make payroll and they draw money down to pay that payroll, or they might pay for a utility expense or rent, they can put it in this spreadsheet, because the money that you spend on that PPP loan needs to go to payroll type expenses. Only 25% can go to utilities, interest on mortgage, or rent. And so you want to track that really closely, because from a bank's perspective and your perspective, success is 100% forgiveness. But final determinations on how forgiveness will be administered by the banks has not come out yet from the SBA. So we're still awaiting that. But you do need to spend that money 8 weeks from the day that you get the money. So if you receive the money today, 8 weeks forward, the money spent for payroll and those other items. The other I'd like to talk about is there's a lot of discussion about being able to hire back the employees, and some folks are having trouble bringing people. They laid them off and now they want back on their payroll, but there's this push for income that they're receiving, where that might be more than what they could have been paid. The guidelines or the number of employees are not specific to an individual, so you don't have to hire back if you lay Dallas Fraser off. You have to hire back a body. And some of the guidelines that we have is that they will look at the number of employees that you have at the time that your PPP application came in. But by June 30, it's based upon your full-time equivalents. So part-time people will count. If you have 2 people working a day, that's equal to 1 person. So focus on the numbers and not the actual person, because there are people who were unemployed prior to this COVID-19 pandemic crisis that may be ineligible for unemployment income that will be happy to take the job with you. Overall, I want to talk a little bit about the EIDL advances, because they are coming out. As Eric said, sometimes there's actually no notice and people are just receiving money in their account, and it will look like a line item on your bank statement that will begin with MISC, like miscellaneous, SBAG, TREAS 310, and an amount. That is your advance. They're not expecting you to justify how you spend that money. It is a grant. You need to spend that towards your operating expenses of your business and move forward. And if you are moving through the EIDL loans, the customers that we are helping, they emails, and it's from the following email. You understand your customer service at sba.gov. Receive an email that tells you that they got your application. You'll know that your application is in review, and then look like it'll say your loan documents are ready. Log into this portal. They will ask you to verify several items in which you filled out on the application process to make sure it's you, and then they will help complete your loan documents electronically. You'll receive the money the next day. So it's it is moving, but just as Eric said, it is stopped at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming on, taking your valuable time on this evening. It's believed that I know we have Mr. Bulger on the line. We're trying to get him unmute, so perhaps he can speak to us briefly. Brian, can you unmute the number 518-369-2847? If I'd love to get a word from Mr. Bulger, the regional administrator for SBA.
Do you have me now, Stephen?
Ahead, Bulger.
This is Steve Bulger. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you, Mr. Bulger, for joining us. I know you're a busy man these days, but I really appreciate you coming and speaking to us. I know we did hear from Mr. Byrd, who's our manager of Small Business Development Center here in Loudoun County, but we thought it would be very valuable to have you weigh in. We have about 100 participants on the line here. Many of them rural businesses in Loudoun County, other small businesses, and I was hoping that you could give them some thoughts on how they might be able to participate in a number of the unprecedented funding that's been taking place from the President and from Congress here recently. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here. Been able to the whole call, which has been really interesting. And Alice for covering the respective programs. And I really don't want to go over all that again. You did a really good job covering that. I would, the programs are out there. They're the centerpiece of the federal government fund for small businesses to this shutdown. So, as Eric mentioned, the best thing you can do is reach out to the DC right there in Loudoun County. They do a tremendous job. They have access to the information and even beyond. And I thought it was really good that he mentioned that preparing really for the next step, which is reopening. As we get going, how can SBA and our SBDC partners assist in getting your business back up to where you need it to be? So I would definitely advise following up on that. And I did want to thank Alex, all of our lenders, because they're the ones who are putting that money out there, along with the SBA, to our small businesses through the Paycheck Protect. The program, as Alice mentioned, did open yesterday at 10:30 a.m. In the first 24 hours, we have gotten over $50 billion funding out to close to 500,000 small businesses. That's just in the first 24 hours. Most of these are smaller businesses that the average loan size is about half what it was in round one. So the interest is tremendous. We'll see if there's any additional rounds of funding. That'll be up to Congress, and moving forward, we will be coming out with more programs to assist in this recovery from SBA. So I would just say stay tuned. I know you've got other speakers. I know you want to get the questions, but any way we can help, we are here to serve. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Bulger. Thank you for all your hard work. We greatly appreciate it, and we thank you for taking the time to join us. I know also that we had a senior advisor of the United States Department of Agriculture was trying to get on, Mr. Kyle Lisk. Mr. Lisk, are you able to be unmuted as well? And Brian, I don't know if we have his number or not, but while we're waiting to see if we can get Mr. Lisk unmuted, perhaps we can then move to Mr. Pete Snyder. I know he couldn't join us till about 5:30, but I understand he's on now. Mr. Snyder, are you there? Mr. Snyder? I know you're there. Are you able to unmute? We're not able to hear you if you're talking. Let me see if I can find you here. I see you. Mr. Snyder, you're talking, but for some reason we can't hear you. Perhaps your microphone is on mute as well. The one on the computer shows that you are live, but perhaps
Yep,
get a little
I can
closer.
hear you guys through my phone.
There we go.
Can you guys hear me now?
I can hear you now. Thank you very much, Mr. Snyder, for joining us.
Aren't I supposed to be a technology entrepreneur?
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Snyder is CEO of Disruptor Capital and founder of the Virginia 30-Day Fund. Could you let our listeners know some information on that, please?
Certainly. The Virginia 30-Day Fund is a nonprofit that my wife and I and a handful of others that many of you know in Northern Virginia, Bobby Kilberg, Todd Stoudemire, Jim Chang, and many others, started really to solve an acute problem, to help small businesses bridge the gap, really the death valley of what we call it, from now until SBA loans and PPP really starts hitting bank accounts of small businesses. I know we have many small business owners in this group. Many of you know 50% of small businesses don't have more than 2 weeks of cash reserves on hand. So we're going to have tens of thousands of small businesses dying on the vine before the very well-intended federal cavalry can get there. And we're seeing news of that every single day. So we started this about 3 weeks ago, and just yesterday awarded our 100th small business funded to actually a restaurant in Richmond called Soul Taco. But we've funded 6 different businesses in Loudoun County and rising. We have raised over $650,000. We're raising more every single day. We're funding struggling small businesses every single day. And by the end of this, I expect that we're going to fund several hundred small businesses across the Commonwealth.
Thank you, Pete. Greatly appreciate it. I know hopefully many of our participants who are listening and others in Loudoun County, and by the way, this will be posted on our webpage for people to watch later. So where's the best place for our listeners to go to find out more about the Virginia 30-day fund? Is there a
Sure,
webpage?
you can go to our website, which is va30dayfund.com. VA30Day Fund. And you can use your smartphone, hit the apply button on there, and send in your application in less than 10 minutes. And then we also ask applicants to turn their smartphone on themselves, give us a 90-second film of who you are, show what your business is all about, and tell us what you'd use the funding for.
All right. Great, thank you so much, Pete. I appreciate it. I believe we have someone also on from the Department of Agriculture.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Kyle with the Department of Agriculture had to step out, but my name is Ryan Lambert. I'm with the Small Business Administration.
Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us, what's your position over there, and give us a little information on what can help some of our rural businesses, please.
Sure. So I handle the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, which is a direct contact between state and local elected officials and the agency to help make sure that we're doing what we can to help the constituents and the small businesses owners in the states. But one thing I wanted just to kind of highlight is the close relationship that we have with USDA, specifically Kyle, who unfortunately had to step out. But while we've been developing the guidance and other documents for the Paycheck Protection Program and other resources, Kyle is, we're thankful that he is working out of the SBA at the moment on behalf of USDA. So we are working closely with them in conjunction to make sure that our rural and farming communities are taken care of. And that's one of the reasons that you see specific FAQs that have come out specifically geared towards farming. While those entities were eligible for PPP before, we heard that there was some potential confusion on eligibility. So thankfully to Kyle and USDA and the help that they had, we were able to kind of clarify that a little bit. So and again, I just want to highlight what, and echo what Steve Bolger said. Obviously, our small business development centers are an invaluable resource. So I appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Supervisor. There you go. There you go, Ryan. Can you hear me now? Ryan, if you're still on there, I didn't have my microphone unmuted. Is there a contact information for those of you those of our participants and listeners that they can contact with the USDA to find out more information?
Yeah, I'd have to get back to you on that. I know that with the SBA, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Okay. There's always the avenue of reaching out to the local SBA district office, who will then be able to, or the SBDCs or any number one of our resource partners who may be able to help route to the correct officials depending on what the issue or the question is. I know with USDA is a very large organization, and I don't pretend to know all of the avenues, but there's farm service and all sorts of other places. So perhaps it's just making sure that it's routed to the proper place. So we can certainly help with that coming from if you go directly to an SBA district office, if you already don't have a connection to USDA.
Ryan, thank you very much. Sounds like Mr. Byrd and others over there are going to be pretty busy. So we will certainly put our resources, these same resources on our webpage, as will Mr. Buffington, and we'll let you know. So at this point in the program, I know many of you listening probably have been kind of drinking from a fire hose a little bit on all of this. Mr. Reiser, I'd like to turn to you quickly, just and if you could just briefly talk about, before we turn it over to questions, briefly talk about the business interruption. I know you touched on it in your opening remarks, but if you could touch on the business interruption program that Loudoun County Board of Supervisors has put forward and some of the details there, and then we will open. We have several people who have sent in questions that we would like to share.
Yes. Thank you very much for the opportunity. We're very excited about being able to do something to help our businesses. Right now, the funds together have $1.4 million in them that are going to be able to help a lot of businesses. The general business fund, the eligible companies have between 3 and 100 employees, have less than $2.5 million in gross annual receipts, have at least 25% loss in revenue that can be attributed to COVID, and must be a licensed and operational business in Loudoun, Virginia. And then there's the agriculture-based fund. The Board of Supervisors added this, and it is for businesses with 0 to 2 employees. Your business is defined as rural by the Loudoun County Zoning Code. Participation in the Loudoun Made, Loudoun Grow program is a requirement. Less than $2.5 million in gross receipts, 25% loss attributed to COVID-19, and any type of rural business appropriately licensed and operational in Loudoun is qualified. And this opens up tomorrow at 12 noon, and we encourage you to go to loudounbusinessfund.org, loudounbusinessfund.org. It will stay open until Saturday at noon, and then we will review. We will take all of the qualified applications, and they will be put into a random drawing to see who gets funded. So we encourage you to go to that website right now, loudounbusinessfund.org. All of the details of what you need to apply are there, and we have a test form so you can test your system and make sure that you can apply. So that's available now. And again, one last time, the website is loudounbusinessfund, all one word, .org.
Thank you, Mr. Reiser. And so I'm just gonna, I know Tony has to leave here in about 10 minutes. I want to turn it over to Supervisor Buffington for a little bit. I know there are a number of his constituents had emailed in and had some questions that some of you, maybe Mr. Reiser or Beth or Eric or whomever, could answer. So chime in if you feel like you have an excellent answer. So Mr. Buffington, I'm going to turn it to you for the moment.
Thank you, Caleb. And I would like to pick up on where Buddy just left off. And Buddy, if you wouldn't mind answering this question, the application period for the Business Interruption Grant Fund, it starts tomorrow at noon and goes through this Saturday at noon, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then if I'm a business applying for that, when should I expect the county to decide who is going to be issued a grant? When should we hear back? When will we hear back or receive funding from the county?
We expect that within 24 hours of you applying, that you will hear from somebody in my department that will reach out and make sure that you have submitted everything correctly. We will follow up with you directly. Next week, we will then announce the finalists, and we will put that out into the just a basic big tub, and we will actually draw the winners. We expect that that will happen on May 8th, and that we will have the money in the hands of the businesses by the week of May 11th.
Outstanding. And thank you for all the work you're doing on that. Caleb, did you want me to ask another question, being that I'm about to leave, or did you want to go ahead and alternate?
Sure, Tony. Why don't you ask a couple of questions since you've only got about 5 more minutes before your next call.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll go to Beth. Beth, could you talk about the grant that you told us about with Visit Loudoun and just give a little plug for that and contact information?
Certainly, thank you for that. Yes, and it is, to be very clear, a lot of what we're talking about are business supports. This fund is specifically for individuals, and the goal is to keep them in their homes. So it is, and we're again partnering with the Community Foundation for Loudoun. So we have a number which is 703-669-5040. I'll give that again. 703-669-5040, and you call and they will walk you through the process. We've got people available to speak to you in Spanish, in Farsi, and a couple of other languages. And the goal again is to make sure that you can leverage the resources that are available to keep you in your home. So it's looking for rent protection. But then it also will help guide you through if you need additional resources, like to know where food banks are or help with applying for uninsurance. So I think that it's a very quick resource for those on the front line of tourism and hospitality who may need help right now to keep them here and safe.
Thank you, Beth. And on to the next question. One of the questions that came in ahead of time is, who do we contact if we need additional help navigating the various grant programs? And I know that a lot of our small businesses are just overwhelmed with all this information, and it would be nice if they could just have a point of contact to call and help them figure out what is my next step? What do I probably qualify for? What should I apply for? And so, Buddy, if you could answer, and then Eric, if you could also answer, just by providing, once again, your best point of contact information.
Sure. In our department, Kevin Welch has been the one that's been doing one-on-one counseling, and he has. You can reach him at kevin.welch, WELCH, at loudoun.gov. And really, there's multiple doors to go in. Kevin would be one contact, and Eric would be the other big contact that is working daily to help businesses navigate this. Eric, do you want to give your contact information?
Yeah, please, again, come to our website, loudonsbdc.com. You can also call our virtual office, now virtual, 703-466-0466. That's 703-466-0466. And we will get you into process to see a coach to talk about all those things as quickly as possible.
Thank you. And I got about 3 minutes left. I think another question that came in ahead of time that probably a lot of business owners have, I'll just go ahead and read it to you. I have applied for and received the paperwork for the PPP loan. It's the federal loan. They have sent me the contract to sign. I want to know how we get the loan forgiven. The contract indicates it is not forgiven automatically, and we have to request it. To whom do we request, and can we count on that? Eric, could you help with that one? Or maybe Alice?
I was going to say, I'll do my best. Alice, if you want to chime in on this too, from the guidance that you've been getting from SBA. I think Alice mentioned earlier, as the information becomes sort of on the fly as we all deal with this unprecedented situation, some of the details aren't quite exactly clear. So what we do know is that you will contact your financial institution that you got the loan from and interact with them to provide the documentation to process the forgiveness of the loan. Exactly when that's going to happen, I'm not a little clear. Maybe Alice has a little bit, but basically you're going to work with the bank that processed the loan, and they're going to have requirements of documentation you have to show, and then that will determine the amount of the forgiveness. And as Al, as you said before, that our goal here is 100% forgiveness in every possible case. So do you want to contribute to that?
Sure, Eric, you did a great job starting it out. I would say that most banks are going to want to work with you, each of the businesses they've lent to document the file. So they may want information related to your utilities bill, a sample of that. They'll want your payroll records, and they'll want either an interest statement off of your mortgage or something related to the rent. And you need to, as you mentioned, work with your bank for that. The bank will submit. It will either submit, or depending on how the SBA determines how the forgiveness will be authorized, so to speak, either the bank or the SBA will be putting that information together. But definitely go back to your bank and work with them for that forgiveness period. Remember, you need to spend the money within that 8 weeks. So I suggest your bank is probably going to start reaching out to you somewhere around week 6, 7, 8, because they want to help you get through that process as quick as possible and get those monies forgiven and paid off on your behalf.
And just very briefly, I'm sorry, Alice mentioned something earlier that's actually important for everybody. If you're getting any disaster funds, whether it's PPP or EIDL, the best practice that we're telling people is to create a separate account and put the money in that account and spend it out of that account. So Alice mentioned that they're doing that automatically for the PPP loans, but that's going to help significantly with when you go back to do the documentation for either tracking or forgiveness or an audit or anything like that. So thanks for sharing that, Alice.
Yeah, sure. And you know what, I'll offer up this, and Buddy, if it's okay if I send it to you or someone on your team. We have 2 sample spreadsheets which are helpful for tracking, and we'll make those available for anybody that wants them. I can share them with you, Buddy, and you can send them out.
Well, thank you, Alice, and thank you, Eric. Thank you, Buddy. Thank you, Beth. And I believe Pete was online and already left. Thank you to Pete. And Caleb, thank you very much for having me. Anyone who needs to reach my office, again, I'm the Blue Ridge District Supervisor, Tony Buffington. Please email me, tony.buffington@loudoun.gov. If you happen to forget that, go to loudoun.gov website and click on Board of Supervisors, and then you just click on my picture, and you can easily get a hold of myself and my office. We're happy to help. Caleb, thank you very much for having me, and you're in charge of the ship. Y'all have a good evening. I got to jump on another call.
You bet. I won't hold everybody much longer, but there are a number of questions, specifically a couple about the national programs as well as the local. So I'll kind of go through a couple of those. I know that Mr. Reiser, you explained the program fairly well. We have those concentrated directly on rural, and then the other $1 million that are available. But I think there were a couple other questions. In terms of that, one question that came through, must there be a minimum of 3 claimed full-time employees, or is part-time acceptable to be eligible for those programs?
Right, and employee is defined by the business's own Form 941 filing, which each applicant will be asked to submit their last quarter's form. If an employee is a W-2 employee and listed on that form, then they count toward the number of employees. It's not 1099, but it can be full or part-time, but it has to be a W-2 employee to count towards the grant.
Okay, great. Another question that came in was, how can I get a copy of the test application I just submitted for use and participation in the actual application?
If they just reach out to DED, we're happy to provide you with that information or help anyone who needs assistance making sure you apply. We want to make sure that we're on standby 24/7. If you have a question, if you need anything, we want to be there for you. So call us directly or email anybody on our website at biz.loudoun.gov. We will provide you with whatever you need to make sure that this is getting into the hands of the businesses as quickly as possible.
Thank you, buddy. Another question was asked, if the business is fortunate enough to be selected randomly, I believe that's how the process is going to, and it will be open for 3 days. Is that right, Mr. Reiser? The
application will be open for 72 hours, right?
72 hours. if they're fortunate enough to be awarded this and one of the applicants that is chosen randomly, how soon till they'll be eligible to receive those funds?
We'll be able to get the money to the businesses the week of May 11th.
May 11th. Okay, thank you. There were some specific businesses in the rural economy that were that wrote in specifically. Do equine and bed and breakfast qualify for the county grant program? And can you answer that?
Sure. Loudoun's makers and producers, as well as rural uses as defined by the county zoning code, which includes equestrian and BEB, and that are part of the Loudoun Made, Loudoun Grown program. We've expanded the requirements for that. We've had 42 new applications to the Loudoun Made, Loudoun Grown program since we announced the grant. So if you're in that program, it's a very simple application, and we want to make sure that you're qualified. So yes, those are, if you're in a herd share or a CSA, if you meet those requirements, you are eligible for the grant program.
Thank you. This one may be for Mr. Byrd or whomever. Is there any way to track the application for both the PPP and the EIDL? This individual put their application in for federal relief, but has not yet received anything except for an application confirmation number. And he has employees waiting to be paid. So any word on that, Mr. Byrd?
So again, the process is slightly different depending on the program. If they have employees, then they, I'm going to make the assumption at the moment that they also applied for PPP as well as EIDL. So the EIDL, if they got their confirmation number for the EIDL, then they're in process. They can try the helpline or to try an email, but essentially what the SBA is going to be able to tell them is that it's in the queue, and they already know that because they have the confirmation number. So it's a waiting game at that point. As Alice had shared earlier, what'll happen is they'll get an email, or they should get an email before they get the advance. And then they'll get a series of, or they'll get the advance and then they'll get emails. It's kind of, they'll know when the application gets picked up because they'll start getting emails. That's kind of the upshot. And as far as the PPP, it really varies because each bank has a slightly different process for how they're communicating with their customers. But again, keep in touch with probably the loan officer or the person you worked with at the bank. And Alice, did you want to chime in on that as well?
Eric, I think you nailed it. Hopefully the bank that you're working with is keeping you informed of where you are in the process and notifying you. It's once the bank puts your application into the SBA E-Tran portal and they receive a loan number, that means that you have received and are guaranteed those PPP funds. And so then it's up to the bank to actually fund that loan for you overall.
So don't, and I'm not going to put Alice on the spot, but don't be shy about contacting your bank.
Heck
right?
No.
They're busy, but they understand you need the information that you need for your business. So they get it. We all get it. You're anxious. You should be. Please continue to be persistent and contact them. Eventually, somebody will tell you something.
Yeah, and I think that it is moving much faster today than it was yesterday. It was a little bit of a slow go, but I think things are going faster today. And so you should be getting some notifications if you are in that round 2. If you have not been contacted, you were not contacted by the 27th of April, you were not approved and authorized in round 1. And so most likely your application is being processed through this time period. It would be my suggestion.
I know we have a number of breweries and a number of wineries listening in right now. Obviously, they're very near and dear to my heart. Many of them are represented in the district. Buddy, could you weigh in a little bit with them on perhaps, I mean, I know you've talked about the couple programs that Loudoun has, but if you were a winery or a brewery, maybe what steps you would take to try to get as much relief as possible?
Yeah, and I think that probably Eric can talk about some of the other programs, but I would like everyone to understand that we have put together a lot of programming that is going to help. The Loudoun Made, Loudoun Grown marketplace right now is something that, you know, we have 60 some wineries, breweries, farms involved, and we can make sure that we get that information and get those products out. The Loudoun Made, Loudoun Grown marketplace is something that we're quite proud of. It's also, going to be part of the big Take Loudoun Home campaign that we're doing with Visit Loudoun. And again, I encourage you to call our office, call John Magistro, Casey, or Chris Blosser, call Kevin Welch, call Eric Byrd, call Beth Erickson. Let us help you in person and, well, virtually in person, get through the system, because we want to make sure that you are eligible and you are taking advantage of every single thing that is available to you.
Supervisor Kershner?
Yes, Ms. Erickson.
On that, one of the things that I always want to make sure that we remind people while we're talking about going after that necessary funding, which is critically important, also want to make sure that people remember to continually, I think what's really set Loudoun apart during this has been the focus on virtual experiences. Just because our visitors can't come to us doesn't mean that we can't go to them. So I just want to make sure that we are looking at that creation of that virtual experience, making those connections that will really help to fuel that recovery. And I'm also going to make that, that plug that Visit Loudoun is looking for those virtual experiences, and we will share with Buddy's team the information that we receive. Again, we're looking for ways to connect with people during this time, and the appetite is there. So please make sure you always remember to market, market, market.
That's great advice. Go ahead.
Yes. One other thing. We talked a lot about the EIDL process and the PPP, but many banks have really encouraged folks to work with their local bank, work with their relationship, because banks will offer a deferment of a loan payment. And the SBA, many breweries and wineries actually have SBA loans that existed prior to this time period. And there is the ability to defer the payments on those SBA loans for 6 months. That would also be your principal and interest. But your bank will also work with you to defer loan payments, maybe for 3 months, maybe for 6 months, but work with them. I always tell our customers, the more we communicate back and forth and can collaborate through times like this, the better the outcome is for both the customer and the bank. And so communicate, communicate, communicate.
That's really great advice. Thank you, Ms. Fraser, for that. I appreciate that. And I know that as a lawyer servicing a lot of different businesses throughout the community myself and nonprofits, we have been working closely with them. And I can't reiterate how true that is. Working closely with the bank, especially if you have a loan with them, looking at for those loan deferrals, it can be pretty critical, can hopefully help keep you in business during this tough time. I know we have a number of other questions. I think most of the questions that were sent in by email were covered either during the presentation. If anybody listening was not able to, didn't feel like they got a full answer, I would really encourage you to email us or email Mr. Byrd over SBA or email loudounbiz@loudoun.gov or the various individuals that's the panelists. I just kind of want to leave it open. Are there anyone specifically would like to say, any of the panelists would like to say any last words before we kind of wrap up and close the session off here for our Loudoun rural businesses?
I think I would just like to say, first of all, thank you to the supervisors, the Board of Supervisors. Thank you, Supervisor Kershner, Supervisor Buffington, Chair Randall. Really, every supervisor has been incredibly supportive of our programming and wanting to help our businesses. It's not like that everywhere. It's hard, you begin to take it for granted in Loudoun County how supportive our board is. So thank you for that. But going back to what Alice said, communicate. Let us know how to help you. We're reaching out proactively to 50 businesses or so a day, but we can't get to everybody every day. So please, if you have any question, any of the people that are on this panel, Eric or Beth or Alice, please reach out to us, because we want to help. We want to be part of that solution. And I think if we all work together and we find as many ways to do this as possible, I think we all have a good shot at coming out of this on the other side.
Thank you, buddy. Beth, did you also have something to say? I see you're unmuted.
Absolutely. So I know one of the questions that I'm hearing a lot is what will that restarting and the reopening process look like? So, excuse me, from the governor's office, I know that there is a task force looking at the restarting and reopening the economy. I know that we're looking at things here locally as well. I know Buddy is leading a good charge on that, as is some of our colleagues in Northern Virginia. We're really looking at helping to provide as much information to you to help you navigate what could be a little bit of a confusing time depending on how those guidelines come out. So please watch and plug into your local business resources, you know, whether it's GIVA, whether it's Visit Loudoun, whether it's DED, to look for that information as it's coming out. We're going to try as hard as we can to push that information out because we want to make sure that our businesses who all want to comply with what those reopening orders look like are doing so in a safe and effective way so that we can continue to welcome people back to everything that we enjoy here in Loudoun. So look for more information coming in probably by Friday. So continue to watch for that.
Thank you
just
very
like
much.
to, one brief
Go ahead.
thing, if you as a business person are, if there's something that you have on your mind that you are curious about, we would love to know what it is that you would like to know more about. So I know that there's literally 1,000 questions that everybody has right now about how things might occur. But it's really helpful to us as we talk to our volunteers and all of the experts that are all gathering around. There is such a community of people who want to help all the businesses in Loudoun. And so we're trying to identify, I know Buddy's been doing this a lot in his department. Beth's they've been doing some fantastic proactive webinars now as well, that if you can share with us what topics you are specifically struggling with or what you are thinking towards, especially if it's beyond the loan programs and that. So that helps us figure out what programming and what content to put together that you feel would be really useful for you. We would love to have that information and have that feedback. That would really help us help you. So I just want to leave with that. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. We definitely love supporting the businesses and want to make sure that they can recover as well as possible.
Thank you, Eric. And Alice, I see you would like a few more comments.
Just real briefly, as Buddy said, I'm very happy to help and answer any questions that folks have. Feel free to email me at Fraser, Frazier, @mybct.com. And it's an exciting opportunity to participate and help folks during this time overall. And thank you for sponsoring this event tonight.
Thank you.
This LoudounBusinessFund.org.
LoudounBusinessFund.org.
Starts tomorrow at noon. This is our fancy marketing right here.
Yes.
LoudounBusinessFund.org.
You've got the charts there. Thank you much, Mr. Reiser. And I just want to kind of close, and I want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank Eric and Beth and Buddy and Alice and Pete. And I wanted to thank the White House, Mr. Lambert for coming on and Mr. Boucher for coming on. And a special thanks for Mr. Buffington, who's not here. You all, and if I missed anybody, I apologize. I think I got everybody who spoke and weighed in. You all come from different perspectives. You all play a very, very valuable role in all of this. I will tell you, I will not stop fighting for Loudoun businesses, especially for our Loudoun rural businesses in the West. I think it's critical to our economy. Buddy and I have had a number of conversations, as have Miss Erickson and I, and I just feel like they are the lifeblood of one of the things we love here in Loudoun County. So as long as I am supervisor, I will continue to fight to make sure that we save as many of our businesses during a very difficult time that we can. I do also want to reiterate and open up my office. If you have any questions, we can hopefully direct you. Jonathan and Stacy and Arlay, my staff, they can help direct questions or answer questions for you. Please do not be shy in contacting us. I hope all of this was really helpful for you. I think it was. I learned a lot today, and I thought I knew most of it. So just goes to show you how wrong I was, but I really appreciate all the information that you guys gave. And I want to reiterate what Buddy said. I would highly recommend those of you listening to test the application tonight before the business interruption program opens tomorrow. I think that would be very helpful and maybe perhaps give you a head start. And I think it will help you see how it works. Is it right, Mr. Reiser? So, and I believe that's Loudoun Biz, B-I-Z, at loudoun.gov. Is that correct?
That's the email, or I'm buddy.reiser@loudoun.gov.
Okay.
Let's hear from you. If you run into any problem tomorrow with the application, just call us. Let us know, then we'll help you.
Great. Thanks everybody for joining. Have a great evening.